welcome to Call Us the Quarantined. I'm Mike,
And I'm Leanne.
and today's guest is Veronica.
Hey,
Veronica,
thanks for
nice to
having
meet
me.
you.
Thanks for coming
You
on. We
too.
appreciate it.
So
Yeah,
do you
I'm so
want
excited.
to, do you want to kind of describe yourself quickly? Where you're living,
Absolutely.
what you're up to?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Veronica. I am 31 and I live in San Jose, California. So closest city is San Francisco. I was born and raised in New York and moved out here just about 3 years ago to get out of the place I always lived and also to follow this guy that I was dating, who's now my husband. So it worked out. Yeah, so I've been here ever since, and I moved here and took a job. So I've been working in cancer research for the last 3 years. I think it's super cool. It's affected my family. So I definitely came out here for a super cool job as well.
Awesome. Definitely going to have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah.
So just to get a good understanding of like your routine in your day today, what were your day to day, not day to day? What were you up to before the quarantine started? So set the stage, paint the picture. What was your routine like?
Yeah, before quarantine, I feel like I was living a different life. This is like completely opposite of how I used to be. So I was going into the office every day. I had a really long commute and I was pretty regularly seeing friends, going to the gym. I was a full-time student studying at the library, and my husband is a photographer, so we were pretty regularly going outside. There's like so many amazing national parks and just like cool places in California. So just driving 20 minutes to the beach. So it was like very free and very like no agenda and just kind of doing whatever we wanted. But I was pretty busy. I was working full time, going to school full time. And I'm doing both those things now, but just from the confines of my one bedroom apartment that has a living room and a bedroom. And that's my whole space every day. So it's definitely been a huge adjustment.
Yeah, and so you're in an apartment you don't own. So
Yeah, so in an apartment, don't own, definitely probably could not financially own for, I don't even know if that's like something I could even think about. The rent in California is super high. The housing prices in California are like something I think I'd see on MTV Cribs. Like it's like, oh, two
It's
million for
insane.
like, it's so expensive. So renting is really all we can do. And we have like, decent jobs and still like this is the best it's gonna get. um there, thankfully, my husband and I both haven't lost our jobs, and thankfully I can do my job from home. But there's so many people that can't, and there's no rent protection in California.
Yeah,
So
that's
if
what we
you're out
hear.
of a job, you're sort
yeah,
of, that's it.
We hear
that's
there's no
it's
rent freeze
yeah,
out
that's
there from
surprising to
someone
me. Why
else.
do you think that is? I feel like California is usually the leader in all good things to come to America.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the expert. I know they did something for housing and mortgages, which, I that's important too. If you have a family and a home, you literally have nowhere to go. There's definitely more apartments than houses, but we've always been so progressive. It's one of the reasons like I love California, is that I finally live around tons of other people that like all voted for the same person for the most part and like kind of feel the same way. But I think it's just such a huge financial burden that I don't even know how the governor would like come up with something so quickly. But I think it's because the cost of housing in California is like so ridiculous. Like I lived in Brooklyn, so I can relate to the like New York apartment costs are not cheap either, but it's like the average one bedroom in like this area is, I would say, 2,500, and that's just like
Oof.
one
Wow.
bedroom. And if you're
Yeah,
not like
Yeah.
dating
that
someone that can split the rent with
good luck.
you,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like not feasible.
Wow. No, it's
So
not.
like
That's crazy.
it's crazy. So,
Wow.
It
having
is
someone to
beautiful
live
though.
with and split the bills with me helps. It is. Is it worth it? I still love it. Like I couldn't imagine living anywhere else, but it's definitely, I don't know how financially feasible it's going to be for like our generation of people to settle down and get houses. I can't imagine ever seeing $1 million in my life. So
Yeah, I would like to, but I have not.
right. I mean, I would love
One
it as
day I would
well.
like if this table in front of us was stacked with $1 million. That'd be cool, but it's
It
not.
would be. No.
And how would you say your mental health was and your physical health was before all of this started? Where would you say you were?
You know, it's like really, it sort of sucks. So my mental health was like doing really great. So I, you know, sort of openly disclose I have PTSD, and I've had PTSD for several years, and it took me like a really long time. And moving to California was the first therapist I found that sort of made me comfortable with it and even knew what it was and was able to get me into the right treatment. So I feel for, you know, about 2-3 years, I've finally really been like, okay, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do support groups. I'm going to put the effort into me. And as soon as I like finally got into the groove that I'm like, yes, I don't have to like think about this every day, this happens. And for a person that sort of can't manage normal anxiety, to deal with like the compounding anxieties that have come from global pandemic, I would say that I feel like I've taken a million steps backwards. So I'm going back to like stage one of like, here we go, we have to manage a mental illness again. So that's been like definitely not part of my plan, but you know, things happen and they're out of our control.
Well,
You
first
know,
of all, good for you for,
Yeah,
you know, taking the
congratulations.
step to find someone to talk to, make sure that you
thanks.
connected with them and work on it and put the effort into yourself. That alone is more than some people can get themselves to do. So congratulations. That is awesome.
Thank you.
I
It is.
I feel like even finding a therapist is just tough because you can find one, meet them, and just hard no, like you don't click with them. And I think that discourages a lot of people from even going further, and really trying. So I try to describe it as dating. Like if you're going on
Yeah.
dates, you're not just gonna meet the one your first time. You gotta try a couple out and see how it feels.
My guy was my guy when I met him.
Love at first sight.
Yeah, it's love at first sight. I'm like, hey, this guy's got a really nice beard.
I
I'll
trust
keep him
him.
around.
Yeah, you know, it was like it was so hard to find the right one. I kept bouncing around, and I wanted to be that person that was like, yeah, I have a therapist and like everything is great, and I just couldn't find it. And I started to think like it must be me. Like maybe therapy just doesn't
Absolutely
work.
not. No.
So
So
so it's definitely a lot like dating. I think you can spend a lot of time finding someone, and you can also get really discouraged when it's like not working for you, and you could be like, well, I'm just not gonna try anymore. That's cool too. So
Yep.
I've definitely had both experiences.
Also, for anyone that is experiencing that in dating, it also doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you and dating doesn't work for you. You're just not finding the
Yes.
right.
Yeah, the right
It's not
person's
finding the
out
right
there in
person.
every aspect of
Yeah.
all things.
Yeah.
Therapy, partners,
Agreed. But
everything else.
yeah, but something else that you said kind of struck a chord with me. For pretty much the rest of time, you are going to put work into the situation, grow, take 20 steps forward, and then something is gonna happen and you're gonna take 6, 7, 8 steps back. It just is.
Yeah.
So at least for me, I've learned not to knock myself down when I feel that I'm taking steps backward, but it's just, okay, here's a new opportunity to try to apply some of the things that I've been working on and learning and see where this next really strong attempt can take me. And afterwards, you'll take even more steps forward than you took backwards. So just know that that's like a absolute necessary part of the cycle, and it will happen again, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will. It's hard to like say to yourself when you're finally feeling good. You have to be like, I have to admit that like I'm gonna feel like rock bottom again, and that's like totally normal. I think that's really hard to say. So, and it's still hard to come to terms with, even when I like work with a therapist and I'm like sort of good at, or what I feel like good at managing it. but it's like, you're totally right. That like really resonates. It's definitely a helpful reminder, especially now when it feels like, when is this going to stop?
Yep.
Yeah. Another
Yeah.
thing that sucks right now is people who like are now realizing, like, hey, maybe I really need to see a therapist. They can't, like,
Yeah, well, they have a lot of online programs that you can do, but even without that first initial like
Yeah,
face-to-face meeting, it's
it's
probably not the
different.
same.
Yeah, I think it's like gotten so great that there's like so much you can do online, and the fact that like my therapist had always offered virtual sessions even before this. So if something came up, or if like I couldn't make it in my schedule to drive there but still just needed somebody to talk to. So I always thought that was really cool, because she was the only person I had ever known that has done that. But I can imagine if you don't have that in person like initial relationship, or you've never gone to therapy before, like how weird it could be to try to do it all virtually. So I feel bad for people that have to get up the courage to do that behind a computer, and like
Mm-hmm.
in your house also, because thankfully I only live with one other person, but like if I lived with my parents, I would never want to be like virtually talking to my therapist. I'd have to
Yeah.
speak in like code or something,
Oh, yeah, I never
because they'd
thought
be
about that.
listening.
Yeah.
That would be rough for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe
So I
that's
think
why I
about
didn't find a
things like
therapist
that.
until like 3 weeks before quarantine.
Yeah, so for you, at what point did you realize that the situation was serious and there was potentially a pandemic coming our way? Like how did you come to terms with the reality that was about to hit us all?
Yeah, I'll like be the first to admit I was one of those people that like up until like the second week in March, which is when California like closed down on like March 15th. I was like March 11th, March 12th, I was helping my friends move. I was like, this isn't that bad. It doesn't kill as many people as the flu. Like everybody's just excited because there's like nothing else to talk about. And I definitely like ate my own words like a week later. Like I was still going to the office. I was still like, let's go get drinks. And then, people that I knew, like their relatives started getting it. And I was like, oh, people are getting it and it's like really bad. And we were in like a really protective state that like got started really early, and it still, blew up even with those sort of conservative measures. So in the county that I live in, there's 2 million people. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's just 2 million people in this county. Like, that's ridiculous. I think we were projected that like 20 million people in the whole state of California were going to get it. So when I started to hear those really big numbers, I was like, oh God, I think it's like much
Yeah,
worse than I thought,
Uh-huh.
especially as, I am in remission, thankfully, but I have had Crohn's disease for half my life, but I am immune suppressed. So I'm in that at-risk group of people. And I, do not look sick. I feel totally great. My physical health is like, it's top notch. But knowing that my doctor was like,
Top-notch physical health. I like that.
That's
but
always good to
knowing,
hear.
Yeah.
knowing that I like couldn't go outside, and they're like, oh, you're in that group of people that like can't go to the grocery store. You really shouldn't see other people. I was like, I'm not 60, like I'm 30, but I didn't think it was that bad. So that was like kind of a shell shock as well, to realize that like, oh my God, if I get it, am I going to die? And like I don't think no one thinks about that. I would hope at this age, like really thinks about their own death. So that was when I really started to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm like different than everyone else. And this is like, we actually can't leave our houses. I remember like being in New York after 9/11 and it didn't feel this weird. So I think that was like on par with how weird things felt in like living in the city at that time. That's when I started to be like, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, did it feel different for you? Did you start to get like more or less scared than people around you once you did realize that this was real? And also, how did your husband handle it with you? Like, was he overprotective?
Yes, my husband is definitely overprotective. I, could not so much as take the garbage out of our house.
Mm-hmm.
So I was extra quarantined. Like I think a lot of people, we're all like definitely feeling really weird, but I think even people that can go grocery shopping or have to like drop something off, I wasn't even doing that. Like, I think there was a 28-day stretch that I didn't leave the house at all, like even
Wow.
to take stuff out. So that's like
It's a lot of
really puts
days.
it into
Wow.
perspective. It
Yeah.
does. It just makes like your little errands, like you don't even realize how running those errands like feels part of your life. So my husband was definitely very protective, but like as he probably should be. So that's probably a
Yeah.
good trait to
Warranted.
be.
Yeah.
But I
Sounds like a
think I
great husband.
started, he really is. But I started out like, oh, this isn't a big deal. And then I went into like pretty intense like panic. And I was like, I'm going to die. This is it. Like my husband's going to die. Everyone, I was just like so panicked. Like the end of the world is upon us. I think in like recent weeks, knowing that like everybody is going through the same thing has been like really the source of comfort that's kind of brought me back down to normal. That like, okay, I'm not the only person that feels this way. I'm not the only person that is like going through this. I'm not the only person that like wonders if every company meeting we're going to hear like, oh, by the way, everybody lost their job. So I think like the strength in numbers cliche is coming into effect for me, but I definitely, you know, it's peaks and valleys. It's like 10 out of 10 worried to like, then I read a good article and I'll be like, you know, it's going to get better. We have a vaccine. And then it's like, nope, definitely not. Definitely
Yeah.
not. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned work. So you were going to an office every day. You weren't working at home. How did that
No,
roll out? How did your company kind of roll out the plans to work from home? And if you want to get into what it is that you do, definitely curious.
Yeah, so I work for this company called Grail. So we are a startup company in Silicon Valley. So in the land of, you know, Apple,
Yep.
Google,
All the
tech,
big ones.
all the big ones are out here. So we're this tiny little, you know, startup that was only 4 years old. And I was one of the first, you know, group of employees to join. And essentially, Grail tries to find early cancers via blood tests. Before you have to go through a lot of invasive testing like x-rays, radiation, mammograms, and that also a lot of insurance companies don't cover, or a lot of people without insurance can't afford to get. So for many people with insurance, getting an x-ray is like usually not something you think twice about, but cancer screening is often done with x-rays and, you know, MRIs, and without insurance it's thousands of dollars. So there's so much missed cancer because people just don't have access to the tests that you need to determine it, because our technology is just not, it's not in a blood test yet. So Grail is hoping to develop a blood test that is able to determine cancer at your regular annual physical. That's just
Wow.
part of a regular blood test, and people don't have to go through those tests. So we basically run clinical studies to try to prove that. So we're not done yet. It's like
That's
an ongoing
amazing.
mission. Yeah, it's super cool. I mean,
It's an
if I
amazing
definitely,
mission, definitely.
it's the whole, like when I moved, I was like, okay, I'm gonna move for this dude, but like I have to do something for me. So I was like looking at all these jobs, and you just get overloaded with all the tech jobs and big companies that are out there. And I definitely just wanted to do something that felt right. And I found this job and this mission. And there's been, you know, family members that I've seen pass away from cancer, as I think like everybody can unfortunately say
Yeah.
today. We've all seen it. So
Mm-hmm.
it keeps you connected to your coworkers in like a bit of a different way. I'm definitely not a scientist. I work in clinical compliance, so I do a lot of like procedural documents, sort of content writing and education and training, and kind of making sure that a lot of our internal documents is compliant with like FDA regulations, or just, you know, patient privacy and like HIPAA, things like that. So it's probably boring to most people, but I think it's super interesting.
I think
I'm
it sounds
definitely
pretty
a very,
Yeah, this
I'm a
is
big
really,
supporter of whatever it is right now. I think it sounds
yeah. So
fantastic.
I'm curious now. So not only are people that otherwise wouldn't have access to being tested, um, everyone is also now getting tested sooner than they otherwise would have. So is it theorized that this would also prevent a lot of people from having the like level or the severity of cancer that they otherwise would have?
yeah. So I think the goal is really detect cancer early, when it can be cured, when it can be like found and treated. So getting it sooner, which makes it, you know, more successful for everyone, but also eliminating, you know, the barriers that people have for these like big tests by being able to give them, you know, blood tests instead of, oh, you need an MRI that's going to be, you know, several thousands of dollars. I think it's trying to reach many groups of people, the ones that get diagnosed late and the ones that maybe don't have the same means that a lot of other Americans do that are fortunate in the fight to cancer. So it definitely brings up a lot of conversations about health insurance, and that's definitely probably a whole separate podcast in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But
where is the company at
That's
with
the next
developing
podcast.
this?
we're still running clinical trials, so I think it will
I think
be.
we've all learned that takes a very long time.
It does. It definitely does. It takes a lot of time and resources, but you know, Grail moves at a pretty incredible speed. So I'm excited to see what happens. So I hope that, you know, one day when there's lots of results, I can share them broadly. But so far, it's still doing clinical studies and clinical
Yeah.
trials
I mean, you
and
said 4 years,
trying to figure it
right?
out. 4 years Grail has
In the
existed.
span of
Yeah,
things,
so
that's
far.
pretty short, and that seems like really high ambitions and a lot accomplished for such a short period of time.
Yeah, it's an incredible company to work for, just an incredible mission to be behind, but definitely done a lot in 4 years. I think this is like the fastest moving job I've ever had. I refer to, like, you know, there's time in the real world and then there's like time at my job. They move at like two different paces. So definitely super fortunate. Wouldn't want to be at any other job, but you know, we're a startup company. So like a lot of startup companies, every day I go on LinkedIn and I see another, you know, saga of somebody that was laid off or another company that, you know, couldn't swing the bills. And so that fear still like lives, I think, in a lot of people in the Bay Area. If you're not at one of the top contenders, I think everybody kind of worries what this pandemic will do. But
Yeah, it's very scary.
thankful to be able to work from home.
Yeah. So how has the company been able to continue operating? Is it business as usual, or has anything had to temporarily stop because of everything that's going on?
I would say that for the most part, we've done a good job at transitioning to work from home. And, you know, we were given all the resources that we need. And it's very, you know, it was quick to move to, hey, this is what we need to do to like slow the pandemic. So I think my company was really good at responding and being on top of it. And I think California in general was just pretty good at responding. So we sort of followed the governor's orders, and now we're kind of just waiting on the governor to like release the floodgates and let us out. But it's, you know, for working from home, I think for my company has been fine. I think for me, it's, you know, not the ideal environment. I do not like working from home. It is not one, like my apartment did not get any larger. I didn't suddenly like develop an office, you know, and my husband also works. So we have to be conscious of, is he in an important meeting? Am I going to walk past his camera in pajamas? Am I like, the microwave is going off and I'm like talking to my boss? So it's like a lot of different factors. I think people are understanding, but as somebody that, you know, uses like routine and like focus to sort of keep my anxiety under control, not having that makes it harder for me to concentrate, and that sort of spirals into like personal and professional woes. So it's definitely been hard. I'm definitely looking forward to going back to the office, but only time will tell. We are still like in California's 6-stage plan. I think we're only in stage 2. So it's a ways to go.
I can absolutely relate. I think a lot of people that were never working from home, you know, whether you were excited about it or not, like wanting to work from home was something that was attractive to you. Just the scenario in which we all were forced to work from home, I think definitely was a big change for a lot of people. And I haven't spoken to anyone that handled that in a great way, at least at first.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through, you know, your emotions and how you were feeling from the first day that you started working from home, and how did you figure out what worked for yourself?
Yeah, I think the first like few weeks I was kind of like, this is cool. Like I don't have to commute. I don't have to put makeup on anymore. I'm like working in my pajamas. It was sort of like, this is kind of like fun to do, but I don't think I really understood the permanence of like how long this would go on. And, you know, the dates kept changing, and it was March, and then it was April, and then it was Easter. Now it's like June. So I think I sort of kept holding on to like, oh, it's going to go away. It's going to go away. And then as it like happened all the time, you know, I was like, wow, normally I would come home and like not work in my house. I usually, you know, was pretty much able to keep work at my job and like not be, you know, working at home. I had a really good quality of life. And it's much harder because my house is my room. If my husband's doing something important in the living room, I have to be taking a call from bed. And I have like a little outside patio, but like a fire truck will come by. So like sometimes I can't sit there. So there's no more designated space that my job does not come with me. So it's like my work is now happening all the time. So I take less breaks. So I found it like really hard to just take breaks. I was working more than when I was in the office. In my
Wow.
house. I was like, how am I not commuting and working more? This doesn't make any sense. But you're like always available and you
Yep.
have nothing else to do. So it's like, well, what else am I doing? I guess I'll answer this email or like jump on this phone call because I'm
Yep.
just watching Netflix, and everybody knows that. So I think that's sort of, it's kind of like the privacy that you had outside of work is also gone. You know,
Uh-huh.
nobody really knew like what you were up to or how busy you were. And it's like everybody just sort of knows if you're not answering your email, you're sitting in your house,
Yeah.
probably doing nothing. And it's
Yep.
really hard to say, like, I just want to disconnect, or I just don't feel like talking to you right now, especially when it's your boss. I have those same feelings with like, you know, friends and like Zoom calls. And sometimes you're just like, I've had enough of the virtual happy hours, but you can't really do that with your job. So
Yeah.
it took me about a month, but I settled into, I take a specific hour every day for lunch. Sometimes I have to move it based on meetings, but I always take an hour and I just put my work stuff away, my work computer, like close all those tabs, and I just block my calendar. Like this is when I'm eating lunch. Most of the time I try to eat lunch with my husband, so it feels like I'm not living an entire day in solitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad for people that are quarantined totally by themselves, because that must be very hard.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure it must be miserable.
Absolutely. But
having a schedule helped.
I would question, you know, what would happen if you said, listen, I need some time for myself. I need to relax and recharge. I am going to be a lot more useful if I give myself some space to, you know, detach and step away from work. Like, what do you think
Yeah,
would happen?
my boss is like super great, I have to say, just like probably one of the best managers I've ever had. So my boss would be, I think, super supportive. And I think my job has been, you know, very accommodating to like whatever weird schedule kind of works for you. You know, and I think I'm in the best scenario. I have no pets, I have no children. So I'm literally only responsible for myself. I don't have like a 3-year-old that runs in my meeting, or like a dog that's like on the keyboard. So
We've seen lots of those so far.
I've seen lots of them, and I always love a good dog that pops into a Zoom meeting. It
Yeah.
really
Always
brings
love a
me
good dog.
joy. I
I prefer
do.
that
Ain't
when
It
the
that the
brings
cats
truth?
hop in.
it brings me joy. I'm sure that the person trying to deal with, you know, this animal or child is probably much more stressed, but I'm brought joy by it.
We
So
haven't
it's
seen
at
any
least
children
somebody's
hop
getting
in front of the
something.
camera yet, but I'm sure it'll happen at some point. Cats and dogs,
but
though.
but yeah, I think I definitely could like set those boundaries without any sort of repercussions. I think it's like dealing with the internal guilt of, you know, everybody else is kind of like working. And it's like, so you have to like pick your mental health. And I think today it's still hard. Like I think mental health is not really something that we prioritize. I think, you know, a lot of companies give you sick days and give you personal days, but does anybody really ever give like a mental health day? I don't think it's still accepted yet. So I think even me, somebody that is like very well aware of mental illness and like goes through the whole process, I think even I still struggle to like pick myself and stand out and like break the stigma, because it's so much easier to just continue with things as they are and like not challenge the stereotype. So I think I'm, also
Yeah.
to blame.
I would not use the word blame. I think that setting boundaries and then respecting them for yourself is really hard work.
Yeah.
So I don't think using blame is the right word. I think we have a society where we have not been encouraged or taught how to put ourselves first, or at least on the same playing field as other people around us. I mean, we won't get into it, but especially as women, we're just
Yeah.
absolutely not encouraged to be putting ourselves first. But I would argue that you honestly get of a lot less comments than you think you would. Even if you
Yeah.
if you try it in a small way and just set your boundary, at least in my experience, and I of course choose to be around people that I think are awesome, but it's just been respected. That's it. It was like a fear
Yeah.
in my own self, like I don't want to offend anyone, or I don't want them to think anything badly about me. But it's like, so then I am valuing their thought of me more than this thing that I am like clearly desperately needing. So I would encourage you
Exactly.
to try it out in small ways and see if anyone reacts, see how it makes you feel. I think you'll
Yeah.
have like a nice positive spiral upward with that, where you kind of learn that there isn't anything bad that happens. It's like
Yeah, I think so too.
each micro moment you're picking and choosing. Like maybe if there's a big project going on and everyone's staying late at the office, okay, if you have it in you, maybe don't pick that day to be like, I'm gonna go home, I need a day to myself. But as a routine and something that you can do for yourself, I would definitely give it a try.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I've always sort of been surprised when I do try, these things. People kind of surprise you. I always find that people have the people that I think won't understand always sort of have more in common than I would think, or they're like, "Oh yeah, I've been through that too." So anytime I've encountered that, I've always found myself to be like, "Oh wow, everybody kind of does feel the same way." So that is really good advice. Definitely something I
Yeah.
think about a lot.
And it's encouraging too. Like if there isn't anyone at your company that's doing it, maybe if they saw you do it, it could be like, wow, I I want to do that for myself too. Like we're allowed to put ourselves first. So
Right.
it could inspire people around you.
I think so. Yeah. I think in general, like even at even just seeing people do it in our friend groups or on Instagram,
Yep.
like, oh wow, I'm taking a mental health day. I was talking to, my dad, and my dad was like, why don't you just take a day off? And I was like, why would I take a day off? Every day is like a day off. And he's like, but it's not. And my dad, takes like actual days off and still has a day off, even though he's also working from home, and he's living in New York and was like working in the city. So it was definitely probably scarier to be on the subway in that time, because I was already scared on the subway without coronavirus.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine being on that
Subway's a
subway
scary place.
with a global pandemic. So I was like, I don't know why you're taking time off, but it's just like it just takes one person to sort of like tell you that and then be like, oh yeah, and then it's like a domino effect.
Yeah, like hearing that, my feeling is like, good for him. I'm so proud of him. It's not like, oh my God, he's so selfish. Does he even care about his
Yeah.
job?
Yeah,
Like,
I
I'm
know.
happy for him. Health has morphed and progressed to this point in the quarantine.
Yeah, I've come to a place that like taking it day by day is like what's working for me right now. I definitely think, struggling more, going back to some bad old habits more, and like needing to lean on my like resources more, and needing to be more conscious about it. I think I got to a place where, you know, it's always sort of ongoing to manage something, especially something like PTSD that is triggered. I know that's like a buzzword right now, but PTSD is often triggered by something. So it's hard to manage something that, you know, is like sparked by something else. So now I just have to be more conscious about, you know, meditating and like doing some of the things that work for me, and doing more reading and like getting off social media more and like avoiding the news. So it's like opposite behaviors, because most of the time I am sort of on my phone all the time. I really like looking at social media, and it's, for me, having family and friends in New York, it helps, you know, bridge the gap that distance creates. But, you know, I have to sort of make these decisions for myself. So as hard as it is, it's like so much better to not have the Apple News app on your phone. It is like it's like so glorious when you don't see something every morning. And I'm like, I
It's
think people have
everywhere every morning.
forgotten that other things are happening in the world that's not coronavirus. Like, of
Yeah,
course,
like
it's
there
a
are
huge thing,
murder
but
hornets that are invading our
And
country
they're
right
getting
now.
pretty close to you. So
Yeah.
I'd be very scared.
they
I'd be
are.
back in New York if I was you right now.
I was like, the state of Washington better get these hornets under control,
Yeah.
because
That's not too
I don't
far
know
from
how fast they
California.
can fly,
Yeah.
but you know, I could drive and be in Oregon in 6 hours. So
I
I don't
think you
know the
could beat
speed
them.
they're traveling at.
Yeah, we're very afraid of the murder hornets in our
Yeah,
household.
the second they get here, I'll be moving to a country that does not have them. I don't like
Yeah,
insects
so
larger than an inch.
But it really sounds like you are extremely aware of yourself, and I think that's awesome. You know, there are so many people that are struggling and they're completely unaware of what's going on. So you are in a good place.
definitely.
Are there anything that you would want to share with someone in terms of how to handle a trigger? Like for me, something that I've been doing is if I feel something instantly, I allow myself to take a few moments and give myself some space to feel the emotion and like make sure it's real, or if it's just my brain trying to protect me in a way that I don't need protection right now. And that's really helped
Yeah.
me like not react quickly and then respond in a way that I feel proud of.
Yeah, I think that's such a great way for you to word it, your brain trying to protect you from something. I think we so often think of like anxiety and these you know, reactions to stressful situations, whatever they may manifest as like bad things. But in reality, it's really just your brain is like, oh my gosh, I'm at risk. What do I do? Abort mission. So it's really just the brain like coming in and being like your number one homie. So that's
Yep.
actually helped me.
Thank you,
It's,
amygdala. I know you got my back, but I got this
yes,
one.
that's actually helped me. Like, you know, just thinking of my brain as somebody that's like on my side, even though it like, you know, is just viewing things in the wrong way and really needs some,
like a overprotective parent that comes like, yo, chill.
yes,
Like I don't need help right
It's a
now.
helicopter
yes.
brain.
Yeah.
Even though my brain needs to like bring it down a few notches, it's definitely like, it's helped me to know that my brain is like truly here for me. So I think putting it into that perspective is something that helped me. But you know, it's very easy to get triggered. I think just watching the news based on how you feel about the president may trigger people. So it's hard to remain not triggered, I think, especially for somebody like me. It's very easy to, the anxiety comes and it's like a tornado. But what I've really tried to do is, you know, when I'm in the moment, like once I've been triggered and, you know, something is happening, I'm having a flashback or I'm just having these obsessive, you know, thoughts that I can't get rid of, sort of talking to myself, as crazy as that may sound, you know, to people that don't understand it.
Yeah, I'm like, that
And
doesn't sound crazy at all.
Yeah.
No.
right. But telling myself like, this is just a trigger, this is just your anxiety, this isn't you, this isn't real, like this is just this moment, and kind of being okay with feeling not great. And I think that's something that like doing yoga and like working out has taught me. Like so many people, you know, we don't want to work out. We want to stop because it, like, you know, our heart is beating fast. It hurts. Like our muscles are shaking. But I think when you can shift that thinking into like, this is just a feeling that I'm feeling right now. And this feeling is like something that I can just live with. And then this feeling will go away and it'll just be a feeling that I had, you know, like 4:36, instead of making it this whole
I
thing.
love
So I just
that.
think,
Yes.
you know, this is just something that I'm feeling. It's 4:47 and I'm feeling triggered right now. And this is just another feeling. So I've taken a lot of mindsets from other places in my life and tried to apply it to, you know, managing PTSD, which is, you know, a job in and of itself. So that's definitely helped, just kind of talking myself back into a place. But I think it's also just the most important, and I don't take credit for this. My therapist didn't take credit for this if she ever, you know, wants it. You know, managing, I think the whole reason why everybody is feeling more stressed is because we're all more anxious. And, you know, it's sort of kind of sounds simple, but like just put a Band-Aid on the thing that's bleeding. So I've been trying to just more consciously be less anxious. So if that means like I need to just lay in bed and watch TV because I can't think about anything else, like that's managing, you know, my anxiety. Or like if going for a walk is like too exhausting to think about, like sort of just doing whatever feels not energy consuming, because that just kind of keeps my overall anxiety levels lower, which makes it less likely that I'm going to get out of control. So kind of just remembering the source and trying to treat it as it seems fit. Not everybody has to do yoga or meditate. Some people can eat Oreos dipped in peanut butter and have the same effect. So it's whatever.
It's pretty good.
It's a wonderful, it's a quarantine snack that I have taken pretty fond
I've
to.
been doing
It
animal
works for
crackers and
some
peanut butter.
people. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to try the Oreos. Animal crackers and peanut butter. Been eating way too many of them.
You've been eating a lot of
Yeah.
animal crackers.
Yeah.
I haven't had a good box of animal crackers in a long time, but I think, you know, that's
I'll have to
something that
mail
you
you
see.
some as a thank you for coming on.
Oh, I mean, that would be so warranted in the mail, you know, animal crackers. Who doesn't want to open that? But, you know, it's so easy even for me to just, we see everybody on Instagram, like working out, or like I'm journaling and like, here's my little setup, and, you know, I'm feeling great and I'm dieting. And I think it's like so great if you can do that, but nobody really ever shows like that. I just ate like half of a tub of gelato because it's all I could bring myself to do today. And I'm rewatching The Office for the 98th time. And that's also like, I think also self-care. It's just never really, it's not pretty and advertised, and like it doesn't get marketed by, you know, Instagram ads. So I think it's so important to, just because somebody does this or somebody does that, to try to remind myself that me sitting here and thinking about animal crackers in a really deep way is not any worse than like also doing a workout. Both things that I can do. I can eat animal crackers and also do yoga. I probably can't do them at the same time, but
I mean, I started trying yoga.
Yeah, you can practice.
And I think it's doable.
Really good.
I'm not very good at yoga though, so maybe I'd probably better at eating animal crackers.
I don't know. I've seen you do a mean tree pose.
That's
That's a tough one.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a tough one to do.
do.
I have terrible balance, so it's
So
tough
do
to do
I.
anything on
Very
one
hard.
foot. I always fall over.
But I'm really glad that you brought that point up. I think especially in the beginning of quarantine, where everyone was like, well, now I have time to clean out my closet or do that thing that I've been saying I wanted to do for months that I didn't get to, and like making really good use of their newfound time to accomplish things and get stuff done and wipe stuff off their to-do list. But for some people, waking up and showering was a lot for them.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, to no fault of anyone, it was really hard for the people that could only muster up the strength to shower, and that's it, to see all of these other people accomplishing everything. And you just need that constant reminder that it's great for them that they're able to finally give their car the wash that it's been needing. But it's also great for you that you showered today, and not comparing ourselves to other people and just taking our own accomplishments for what they are and knowing that it's okay to not be okay right now.
Exactly.
I think I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah. So what would you say the biggest changes from quarantine are going to be continued in your life?
I think that, it's really easy for me to get distracted, and being busy was just something I always did. Like, I was just working, I was studying, I was out with friends, I was going to so-and-so's birthday, I was going to this yoga class, I was going to this vacation and this winery or like this brewery, and I was always doing something. So it's very easy to like not be with your feelings and like sort of distract yourself from what's going on. And when you're sort of stuck in a like tiny apartment with just the person you married and no one else, you can really like get a crash course in like all of the things I'm feeling and all of the things my husband are feeling live in like this 10-foot by 20-foot room, and that they're just kind of going to be here forever. So I think that being more mindful and like finding an opportunity to sort of digest more of my feelings and be with myself more and not use distraction as like, oh, I'm doing so well. I think it's really easy to confuse being busy with feeling great, but you're just sort of like distracted from everything. So it's very easy to not pay attention. And I'm the first to admit I'm like always on my phone. I'm one of those people. I'm very easy to get distracted. I did download TikTok. It is taking up a lot of time.
It's very amusing.
I have somehow managed to not download it.
We have a TikTok. I post.
I've never seen it.
I don't even make videos because I'm just too embarrassed about what I would find on the internet 20 years from now. But watching them just takes up like so much time.
You gotta hope it goes the way of Vine and just disappears at some point. Like Vine, all those videos are gone. Hopefully the same happens with TikTok, like for people not to find later.
Right, or like MySpace was like, oh, we like lost 10 years of data, and all of us are like, thank you.
Yeah, some probably did that on purpose. Someone just had the big button. They're like, boom, goodbye.
Yeah, so I think that'll be something that I take all the time, but I also definitely have become like a little more of a germaphobe. Like there were just things that I just went on a plane and like didn't really think about it. And I just went to concerts and like I rode the subway in New York, like people like this close to my face. And I wasn't carrying hand sanitizer all the time. I was not wearing a mask. I never thought about buying a mask. When I was sick, I like went to work, never thought about these things. So I now sort of realize how kind of irresponsible some of those things can be on other people, or like old people that I bump into at the supermarket, or somebody that is at risk that was at the concert that I was at, and I was just sort of not thinking about it. So I'm definitely going to wear a mask more. I definitely am like going to stay home when I'm sick more, which is not something I'm proud of, but it's the truth. And I think just kind of more conscious of my like fellow human beings. Like when I go out into the world, it's really not just me going to Target. It's like me going to this place that hundreds of other people go to. And now we're all going to give this virus to each other. So it's definitely just put, it's definitely just put the fact that like, I'm just one of many, like the world really is so much more than just like my errand and like my thing and what I'm doing. So it's definitely, I think that's a good thing, but
for sure. Yeah. Where everything is interconnected. You do one little thing and it, anything that's put in motion just stays in motion. Other things are happening because of every single thing that we do. May everyone have the same realization that you have had.
I hope so. And I hope that Target continues to wipe their carts down, because I was a little concerned.
That's so nasty.
I was like, why were we not doing this before? They were like, congrats, like Costco has started cleaning its carts. And I'm like, what do you mean? Never? We were not, I assumed we were doing it maybe at the end of the day or like, they weren't doing it. And I was like, this is a little upsetting.
Like
could we always
had access to bleach and all these cleaning products, and no one's using them.
I know that's sort of, because I'm definitely like sort of a little bit of a neat person. So I'm just like, has people not been, what have you been cleaning your house with this whole time?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a little concerned. So some of these things I hope that we maybe get better at as a generation, cleaning our homes and also not sneezing aloud into the universe would be great.
I love it.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Thank you so much.
Do you have anything that you'd want to plug or anything?
No, I'm sort of just sitting here by myself. I don't have any plugs, but what I will plug, has nothing to do with me, but it's a very cool app you can download in the App Store, and it's called the COVID-19 Tracker. And even if you are asymptomatic, you can report your symptoms in this app every day, and that can contribute to the data for the testing that Massachusetts General and like Stanford hospitals are doing. So just because you're well and can't get a test doesn't mean that you can't help the broader scientific community.
I love it.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Sound like you know what you're talking about.
I'm definitely a little bit of a science nerd. I tried to keep that reined in, but definitely a science nerd.
Thank you so much for being open and real and sharing your experiences. I think that, what you've gone through is definitely going to resonate with a lot of people. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for giving me a place to share. I was so excited to be able to do this.
Yeah, I was looking forward to having you, and it was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad you guys even came up with this type of podcast. I think it's just going to be so interesting to hear like all the episodes as they progress.
Even if it doesn't become like a big thing, it's still something that's out there that if it helps one person, it helped one person, and that's one person's life changed.
And like, I'm sure that this probably won't happen, but I like thinking about like, if there was even just a recording of 10 people from 1918 talking about just their very specific experiences of the Spanish flu, God, listen to that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So we'll have these forever.
So 100 years from now, it's podcasting be like the biggest podcast in the world.
Yeah. It's going to be one of those things that in the future they'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they're going through the 28 pandemic, they'll look back.
They had to deal with depression back then. We cured that like 50 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, I hope.
I hope so. I really hope that we are the only ones that have to continue dealing with it. But yeah, so I think it's great. I'm super excited for you both.
Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you.
Your job sounds awesome. I can't wait to see the results coming from there. Sounds really cool.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
All right. Thank you again. This is called Quarantine, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.